Welcome to video 5 in my Introduction to HTML video series. In this video I want to talk about article, header, footer, and I want to introduce how to make a link to another web page on the internet. So header, article, and footer. These are new elements introduced with the HTML5 spec. They're all semantic elements. In other words, they don't provide any visual changes to the web page, but what they do is they create a semantic ordering to the web page. They provide some context to your content. They provide meaning to the content. So let's start with header. In video number 2, I talked about the different parts of a web page, the anatomy of a web page. I talked about a header, I talked about content, and I talked about a footer. And I said that the header was going to be the chunk of the web page that will introduce what the whole entire web page is about. So on most web pages, go back to the Star Tribune article again, most web pages, the header is going to have the website's logo and logo type on it. For example, Star Tribune. And then on this page, it's going to have something more specific, Vikings/NFL, because this page is just about the Vikings and the NFL. That's going to be the header information. It introduces what the entire web page is about. So if I go to my HTML version of this that I've been marking up, I probably want to create a header. The header is going to look like this. Header opens. I'm going to tab over my H1 because it's going to be nested inside of the header. And header closes. Now if I save this and I go to my web page and refresh it, it's not going to look any different. It didn't change anything here. It still just looks like it did before. But what is different here now is that this chunk up here now has the meaning of header material. This will come in handy later on when we start marking our page up with cascading style sheets, and it also is important to things like screen readers that can tab from a header to an article, for example. I want to move on to the next chunk, the next semantic element, which would be article. The article tag should be used to enclose all content that is directly related to one another. So this content here, all this content, is one news article about Chris Cook and his trial and how he was found not guilty. If this is all content that's related to one another, you want to have it contained inside of article tags. Open the article above the headline for that article, and I'll close the article down below where the last paragraph in that article is. If I save this and refresh it in the browser, once again, visually no change. But what's happened is something very different. Semantically, now all of that text can be interpreted by the browser as being related text. Before, it was just a bunch of paragraphs that were not related to one another as far as the browser was concerned. Now the browser sees all of that text as being connected to the same subject. This is huge. As we start moving into the future and start working towards a more semantic web, having chunks of text like this conceptually connected becomes more and more and more important. I'm not going to get into semantic web theory here, but if you want to do some research on it, I strongly recommend reading some of the articles that are linked to on the W3C webpage on semantic web. It's really interesting, and if you want to go into web development in the future, it's going to be an incredibly important topic. An article is just scratching the surface of dealing with the semantic web. So even though it doesn't make a visual change, which are HTML elements, we shouldn't worry about HTML elements making a visual change. It creates that semantic change. It changes the meaning of that content to be related. Remember, the browser doesn't know what any of these words are. The browser doesn't know what the content means inside of the paragraph. All that it knows is that chunk of text is a paragraph. Now, once we surrounded this article in an article tag, the browser knows that all of that stuff is conceptually linked. It's thematically linked. It doesn't know the content still, but it knows that it has the same theme. Let's move on to footer. Footer is going to go down at the bottom of the page. We talked about that in video 2. On the Star Tribune webpage, the footer is way down at the bottom, and it contains auxiliary navigation, navigation to other places in the website. It contains links that aren't found in the regular navigation, things about the company, subscriber services, terms of use, privacy policy, and the copyright. It's going to contain all the utilities of the web page. So our footer is just going to contain the copyright. I'm violating copyright law right here. I hope you don't mind, Star Tribune, but I'm not making any money off this. So anyways, just so you know, this content is owned by the Star Tribune, not by me. But I'm going to insert my footer tag. So this right here now becomes footer related content. Once again, if I save it and refresh it in the browser, you're going to see no visual change. Nothing happened when I refreshed it. But the big thing is, it is semantically now related to footer type content. That's really important. So just remember, these 3 new elements that I've introduced, header, footer, and article, none of them create any visual change, and that's not what's important. Remember, HTML should not control the style. It should not control the way that the page displays in the browser. What it does is it semantically marks up the page to give different chunks of content meaning. And that's what these 3 very important elements have done. Article, header, and footer have marked up our page to have 3 thematically connected sections. Alright, so that's the 3 semantic elements that I'm going to talk about in this section. Now I want to just move on to a completely different topic. It's the link tag. The link tag is going to be a tag that will create a hyperlink. It's going to, when clicked on, move you from one place to another on the web. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link right here. I'm going to create a link around this Star Tribune Vikings NFL text. I'm going to make that a link that when you click on it, it takes us to that Star Tribune webpage, NFL Vikings webpage. Here's what it looks like. It opens with the A, closes with the A. Inside of the opening A tag, there's an attribute. The attribute is the href attribute. An attribute modifies a tag. It modifies the way a tag behaves. So if I don't have that href in there, if I save this, refresh it in the browser, nothing happens. Okay? So it's not a linkable, it's not a clickable link yet. See? It doesn't take me anywhere. But as soon as I put the href attribute in there, href equals quotation marks, it turns it into a link. It's not going to take me anywhere right now because I haven't defined a URL for the link, but it is a link now. So the href transforms the regular old A tag into a link. To make it go somewhere, I have to provide a URL in between these 2 quotes. So I'll go back to the Star Tribune webpage, copy the URL, paste it in here, and I have to contain the entire URL. The entire URL has this part right here, the http://. Other words, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Hypertext Transfer Protocol means it's going off of your computer onto the web. Then it needs the www, and it needs the rest of the URL. So I'm going to save it, refresh it. Now when I click on it, it takes me to the Star Tribune webpage. So this is how you create a direct link from one page to another page on the internet. So in summary, we talked about 3 semantic elements: header, article, and footer, and we talked about the link tag.